Hello, 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 Blooming Brushes. This is your very delayed September class. And we had done our little bit on reflection, our little technique. And that's what this class was pretty much all about. I'm doing this as a video because I've been a little off. And I'm just going to do it this way and hope that that is something that transfers all right. And let you know that there's going to be something else coming your way. Okay, so this is my painting that I actually did. And it's one of the very few times I've actually done a painting and decided to teach it to you guys. And it's not an original. It's something that I took a class in and I made my own little tweaks with. So first I want you to look at the picture. So you should be able to see everything. Move this a little bit. So here's the top of the canvas. Here's the bottom of the canvas. And we're going to think of this in thirds, okay? I'm going to think about the mountain range that's here and the fall foliage, and then how it reflects back into the water. And then you have a little more water, and then we have these chairs sitting on the deck. So I've done this again as I wanted to turn this into more of our acrylic type paintings. But again, mountain range, the water with reflection, and then I have not even finished the deck here. But I do want to take a quick little peek at that deck. It's a light brown, and it's got all these lines, and that's the beginning of doing that. So I'm going to remove this. I'll bring it back fairly often. I'm just going to be working on a multimedia pad. And normally I would tape off my edges, but I'm just going to go ahead and kind of go with it as is. So I'm going to break this down into about thirds, and I'm going to be very about it. About it? Okay? Just to give myself an idea of where I'm going. Okay, and I know you probably can't see that, and that's okay. We're going to start here, and whatever we do here, we're then going to reflect here. And I told you in our little lesson that sometimes it's easier to do one part and then flip it around and do it backwards. We're going to see what we can do with this one. So I need to create some blues. So I'm going to grab for us just a primary blue, just a plain blue and a white. And I want another blue in there that can be kind of a gray color, or I could just mix a gray. So what I've got right here is primary blue, white, and I'm using Williamsburg gray. No, blue, Williamsburg blue. But I want you to see that there's a bright blue, a white, and then kind of a dusty blue. So here's where I'm going to start. I'm also going to have a little bit of purple dioxide on my plate ready to go. Brushes are always going to be what's most comfortable for you. I did not grab water. Shame on me. But I can do that right here, right now. So we'll just get some water so we can get this going. There's our water. Might as well need a paper towel or two as well. And I've just picked up a big filbert brush for right now. Ooh, I got a little extra water on my piece, but that's okay. So here's my big filbert brush, just a big brush in general. And I'm going to make a light blue with white and blue. Decide how white I want it. I probably want a clean thing of white too for here. This is kind of this bluish color. I'm going to start on the top of my page, and I'm just going to start putting it in, okay? All the way across. Bloop, 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 bloop. I'm going to pick up some of this grayer color and blend it in so I don't have quite as bright of a sky. I'm coming all the way down, all the way out to my edge. And that sky is pretty gray blue. So I'm going straight into white, and I'm going to just start lightening it up. Just a nice, light, easy stroke. Still with that same dirty brush, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of purple. And just on the very top, I'm going to blend a little bit of purple in. My sky still seems dark, but I'll be lightening with a lot of clouds. I want to think about that mountain range. So I'm going to mix a little of this gray or blue with a little bit of purple, just to get this grayish purpley tone. Maybe even pick up a tiny bit of blue. And I'm just going to kind of lay in where I want my mountains to kind of be. And I'm just tapping these in right now, okay? They're just very basic little shapes. They don't have to be perfect. They aren't perfect. Pull a line across the bottom, okay? So why have this dirty color? I'm wiping it off, but I'm going to put a little bit in my sky before I rinse my brush out, and then just blend that into. It's kind of that reflection of my purples back into my sky. I'm going to go into my white and lighten it up a little bit now. And streak it in there. Okay. Don't worry about them being perfect in any way, shape, or form. You just want to have the basic idea of them in there. We need to let that paint dry a little bit before we get into playing with how to define them or anything else. So I've kind of cleaned my brush, but it's not super clean, as you can see. And I'm going to use that thin down paint under here. This is my water area. And that's much darker than I want it. So I'm going to go straight into white just to lighten that up. And a little more. Not worrying about reflection at this point. I'm just getting a little bit of color down here. Because I really want to do everything on the first part before I worry about the reflection part. So that's just a little bit of water, and that's fine. It's still really wet, so what I'm going to do is pick up a little bit of my burnt umber or dark chocolate. It doesn't really matter. That's not either one of them. And I'm going to mix it with a little bit of white, so it's not quite as strong of a brown. And for right now, I'm just going to base coat, a light base coat in my deck area. Sorry guys, pounding paint. Okay. So cleaned up my brush a little bit. Picked up a little white. Picked up a little brown. Make a light brown, and this is going to be where my chairs are going to sit. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill this part in. Don't worry if it's not super clean. A little more white, a little more brown. You can easily just pick up a tan color too if you'd rather. I like how there are slightly different shades that happen in my underpainting. That way when I go in and add my details, I already have some interest. Okay. Depending if you're painting on canvas or paper, it will determine a little bit of how quickly your paint dries. All right. I'm going to go back in up top with my mountains. I've kind of cleaned my brush off again. And I'm going to pick up white, just kind of more in the corner of my brush or just the side of my brush. And I'm going to lay this whiter color in right around my mountains. This is our chance to kind of clean up the mountains a little bit. And then I'm going to streak that white again. Oops, not into my mountains. And just from my mountains out. Make them a little lighter above my mountains. If I need to or want to, go back into that bluish, grayish, purpley color, and I can clean them up a little bit again. And either now, or when it dries a little more, I can even make it a little lighter right by the mountains or hills. depending on where you're living. This could just be the hills across the lake from where we want to buy a lake house. That's not happening today or tomorrow, but all right, let that be for right now. Actually, while we still have that color going on, whatever color we use to mix up our mountains, think of that color and then just add a lot of white to it. And think of where those mountains are and come back in and kind of mimic them lightly into your water. They're not going to be as dark because we've already lightened their color. They're reflecting into the water. And they don't have to be perfect shapes. If you were a perfectionist, what you can do is once you have your main scene, you can actually trace it and then turn it around and put it in exactly like it is above. I don't think that's necessary. However, just like we have above our mountains, we're going to want it to be a little lighter, reflecting back in the water. Bring a little white next to your, little white, not that much white. We should have a bit of a reflection from the mountains. I'm going to pick up some dark Hauser green. I think I am. Just with either a round brush or a flat brush. It really doesn't matter, and it doesn't even matter the size. But you want one that either has a decent point from a round or a fairly good chisel edge, whether it is a flat brush or even a filbert brush. And I'm pulling the paint so I have that nice chisel part of it. And I'm going to start just kind of laying in up and down. So this up and down, 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 up and down. This is kind of like the beginning of my back trees. I'm just wiggling it up and down, up and down, up and down. And I'm going to get skinnier as I go in front of my mountains here. I just pull some up this way for now. It comes down to almost a skinny line, just pulling some here and there. As I get on the other side, I'll start going up and down again. We'll be coming in with a lot more colors, fall colors. So remember, this is just kind of for your background because fall doesn't turn into all those colors all at once. We're going to create, I'm going to bring that chisel edge, and here's the middle of my mountains. I'm just going to kind of bring this as a little bit of an arch on each side. So I might come down to this bottom part and just pull in a little bit of the greens again. And I don't want it to all blend together, so I want to see a little bit of that background color. And or I can pick up a little bit of white so it's not quite as dark. Just lighten the value a little bit down here. It should look really messy right now. And we're not worrying about the reflection at all. You can have a couple little spots that peek up. I'm going to rinse my brush out. And I want to have some colors that are going to start to pop above. So I've kind of got these greens that we had to begin with, and now we're going to start pulling in some of these fall colors. We're still going to see some of these greens right at that horizon point. Don't worry about what's happening at this point on the water. So I'm going to need some pretty vibrant colors. So I'm going to just grab some pre-mixed colors of, this is Jack-o'-lantern orange. Orange flame would be a really good one. I'm going to grab just a primary yellow color and a red. I'm just using the primary colors where I can. You can always use any colors that you like. And you can add more of them. It doesn't have to be just these 3 colors. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with this orange, okay? And I'm pulling it to a nice chisel edge. And I'm going to start adding just bits of this orange in here, and it's just tapped in, and it's just back and forth, because you're not going to see it all in the same area. Let's do a little bit down here. Just kind of let it get just a little tiny taps. Even tap this way. Pick up in through here. And I get far enough where we have a little more trees, I'll start tapping up and down again on this side. Now, if my paint is too wet, it's going to get blobby, and orange and green are going to make it brown, so I got to be careful. I think I'm okay. So there's the first of my orange. Not even cleaning my brush off. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the yellow. I'm going to do the same thing here and there. Skipping spots. Just little taps here. This piece, the fall background leaves, not even so much leaves, background color, are what's going to be our flower type things. I'm going to wipe that brush, not clean it, just wiped it, and I'm going to pick up some red, just here and there, just little taps here. Just those touches of red that we're going to start to see. We'll need to come back and brighten some of these up too. But just want to have the idea of these colors, and you can mix your red and your yellow together, your red and your orange together to get another value. Maybe even pull a little of them down below. I'm rinsing my brush out, and I'm going to go back into my green, and I'm going to grab a little bit of that yellow. So here's a little bit of that yellow alongside that green. I'm going to make just a lighter green. I'm going to pull some of this lighter green, lighter yellow green in here too. So I've got a couple layers of green. Puppy's barking. It's loose and free. Now, get that mixed color in my brush. At this horizon line, I'm just going to go back and forth this way. Maybe a little darker green, pulling in a little bit here too. I'm going to do it on each side. And this is going to start representing it coming back into the water. But we're doing more of these back and forth strokes versus those up and down ones. So we just have this bit of green shadowing. And then we're going to want to rinse our brush out and think about those colors that we started adding in. So we had some yellows, right? Think about where your yellow is, and you pick up a little bit of spots of where you see your yellow. Look here. even if it coming back a little bit into your water. I'm just wiping it off, looking back to see where I see more of my orange. And it's just these back and forth strokes. It's reflecting what we see there. And then into your red too. So your reds are going to be just little points higher here and there. And it's not exact. It's about. It's a idea of. And when we get really opposite here, we might even just tap these back and forth so we see green on both sides. Picking up a little more of that green, just tapping both ways. Gonna let those rest for a second. We might need to add a little more color. I rinsed my brush out pretty well. And I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna dampen the sky with pretty clear water. Just dampen it a little bit. I'm doing that just so when I go to do my clouds, I'm picking mine up with the corner of a brush, but you can pick them up with a round too. I just want a little bit of paint on that brush. And because this is damp, I'm going to like very lightly start giving some little swirls of cloudy cover and you go underneath. So almost like little humps. And then drag your brush underneath. Add extra water to my brush. And I do this again. These series of fluffy little clouds and a nice line underneath them to help them blend into the background. Nice soft touch. And do as many or as few as you like. But they're wispy clouds, so they don't need to be super pigmented. And we're going to think about those backwards a little bit. And instead of trying to make cloud shapes, we're just going to, ooh, that was an error. I'm going to remove that. That was not the color I wanted there. But you know what, that's okay. Because we end up having some different colors in our water and in our sky. I just blend that in. We'll just make it part of the dance. And since it was part of the dance over there, let's do a little bit of the dance over here too. So we've just got a little bit of a darker color reflecting back into the water. Now we'll pick up a little white, not blue, and we'll just streak a couple little of these ideas of where clouds were reflecting back down into the water. If any get to be too much, just go back in with your wet brush, clean wet brush. Just let them be scooched out a little more. Right next to your mountains, you want to get a couple spots that might get a little whiter, not bluer. I've done that twice now. It's okay. Picking up the extra. Apparently we needed a little shadow there. Let's do a little shadow here too then. No mistakes, guys. There really are no mistakes. Except for when you do the same stupid thing twice. That's a mistake. I'm really picking up the paint, rinsing off my brush, going back with a fairly clean brush, rinsing off, and then I can kind of spread that color around again. Let's try that with white, not blue. Apparently my white should not be that close to my blue. think about what's happening on each side. I'm going to take that white and I'm going to very lightly go just kind of on one side of my mountain range here. And I can do that opposite side here. I run out of paint, that's perfectly okay. I just want it to be hit and miss. In both of my paintings, this one I need to go back and really intensify my colors up here. But I want you to notice how much whiter this is here. It reflects off of what I did there, but you really see it lighter into the water. And also it looks very similar on this one. That we really want to come back and really reflect and make it lighter in the water. So with that being said, I think I could easily thin my paint down, or have a little extra water in my brush, and come back in and really play up these highlights back around my mountains. So I'm pulling from the mountain out and into the water. And I've got some water in my brush, so it's a little washy. And once I get it out here, I can just like let it be a little bit this way too. Should get a nice reflection over here, nice reflection up here. Break up my water a little more from the clouds above. And let's look at the saturation of color that we have in our colors up here. And it depends on where you're at, how muted those are going to be. But I think I'd like mine to have a little more vibrancy. So I'm going to do that with the orange and the red together. And I'm going to just bring a little more of this color. Is that orange or the red or the straight orange? And don't be afraid to dance them higher up, because we can always come back in and add a little more of the green above it. But I really want to see these good dances of bright colors, a little more of the yellows popping through. So these are a little different than the flobs if you've been watching them on my page. These are a little more up and down, and you see some of these colors coming back into your water, whether it's the orange or the red. In the water, think back and forth. Above, think up and down. And I definitely want to be able to see a little more of the greens popping up here and there too. So I might come back in with my green. Just pull in a little green above. This is going to be primarily your darker green. All right, rinse your brush out. And with the chisel edge of a flat brush, pick up a little white. You can have a little bit of water in it. And I want you to think about where your horizon line is. And I want you just to start at one edge and just start pulling this whitish line and divide. And that should really help break your water up. Same brush. I've got a little bit of white in there. I've gone into my water. I've made this really kind of washy little puddle. I'm tapping it into my paper towels, and I'm just going to start lightly tapping in this kind of bit of a, let's call it a fog, or a little bit of a fuzzy reflection back into the mountains from the water. Now I'm just doing this with a regular flat brush. You could do this with a blender brush, or even a, oops, got green, didn't want green, so I rinse my brush, pick up a little more white, thinning it down. I said you could do this with like a blender brush or even a filbert brush. I'm just adding a little bit into my mountains. I want this to be fuzzy. If it starts to look too white, just go and clean your brush in water. Just tap this fuzziness around there. And it might reflect back a little bit too. Just a little bit right into this water. No area has to be exactly as it looks. It can come back and add a little more green to break it up if it needs to. Definitely need to there. Don't worry too much right in front of your mountain. Just have a nice bit of color. And back into your waters, whether you've gone back and forth like I showed you this way, or if you want to now start picking up some of these yellows and these oranges, and maybe tap a little stronger color where you've got stronger color up front, on top rather. So it's a little stronger here. Let's just tap in. I don't love this, what's happening here. We're just gonna do that. Okay, I'm gonna pick up a little red and just tap in a little red so it's a little stronger. Yep, like those. Even go back and pick up a tiny bit of that green, just tapping it in. So there's a definite green reflection back this way too. But when you have a reflection, it is not very defined. Okay, we're going to move on to our water next to our shore, and I'm going to go back to a bigger brush, and I'm going to go back into those blues we were using, and maybe darken it with a little deeper blue. And right next to the dock or the pier, whatever this is, we're going to pick it up and be a little darker right next to where our chairs are going to sit. Okay. So I made that darker there. While I still have the paint in my brush, I'm picking up some white, and I'm just going to streak a little more white. And if you don't like to streak it back and forth, you can tap a little bit so you have a little bit of some waves and such happening. I just wanted white. This is quite white right next to your mountains. If it fades on you as you are painting, that's very common. I'm just going to come back in, and I've got white, and I've thinned it down a little bit with a little bit of water. I'm just going to come back in here and just tap these a little again, a little deeper here. Certainly can do that a little bit more up here too. Want these to kind of reflect the same way. So if it's much lighter up here, then we want it to be lighter in the water too. If we lighten the water, we might need to come back and lighten up around our mountains up here. All right. This is the point that I was with this particular piece. I'm going to get close. And we want to start with a center line. And there we want to slowly start angling these lines out in each direction. And I did mine first with a pencil. You can go directly to paint, and or you could go with a pen. I don't seem to have my pencil. I would like my pencil. There it is. There it is. So, and a straight line of some sort can really be helpful here, whether you're using, that's not what I wanted, a ruler or even just the edge of a piece of paper. I have a little straight edge here, so I'm going to use that. And these don't have to be perfect, okay? But just helps if you start to move over and start to angle it out a little bit. They're going to get a little wider as you go. And you want your boards to be about the same width. Maybe a little wider as they go out, like I just said. But you don't want them to go from, a 1/4 of an inch to 3 inches. But they are going to get a little wider as they go out. And then you're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm going to let it start get a little more of a... And then when I get this part done, when I get them all in line here, I'm going to want to go back over those lines with a darker color. So because we added white to the burnt umber, most likely the burnt umber is going to be sufficient as the line color. Okay. So I have lots of lines in there. So I'm going to come in with my burnt umber. And the first thing I'm going to do is just put those lines in. Two ways to do your lines. One is to use a flat brush and to pull your paint so you have a nice chisel edge, and then just follow those lines with your nice chisel edge of your brush. And it's okay if they have a little variation from skinny to possibly a little wavy or a little thicker. The other way to do it, I'm just going to get a couple more of these done this way. And if you don't follow your line exactly, don't worry. I got to tell you, if you look at decks or piers, most of them are not perfect. Or at least most of the ones that I visit are not perfect. All right. Other thing you can do is to choose a round or a liner, whatever you prefer. Roll your brush and then use that skinny tip hang on. Brush at a very hard end. Don't like that brush. Try this one. I'm still staying on the tip of my brush. Either way works. And I'm not concerned if it is exactly the same thickness. But I do want to get all the dark lines in. Now once I have those dark lines in, either using that flat brush or a round brush, whatever you feel best about, I'm going to come up here and I really want to make sure that I can kind of get an idea that at least one side kind of goes toward making this a much more defined area. So I can come up one side and go across, up the side, go across, up the side, go across. So I want there to be a really distinct line between my, I'm going to switch and go back the other way. I want to make sure I'm pulling some of this line across and then back down into my board, across, back down into my board. And then we don't just have dark lines just at the top. So you do want to make sure that some of these get a little darker in spots here and there. So that's not always in the same spot. Part of your boards are just going to have a little more wear. So we're just going to add a little bit here and there. And I'm just using that chisel as my brush, and I'm just being a little sketchy here and there with it. In the same way we're adding a little bit of shading within and next to our boards, we're going to want a little bit of a highlight too, just so there's some contrast. So the very first thing is just to add this darker brown, which is the straight brown. Then I want you to pick up a little bit of yellow. What happened to my yellow? So I've got a little yellow and a little brown. I'm gonna pick up a tiny bit of white. And I've made this lighter color, a little more white. And just like I did with the shade color, I want to come in here with a little bit of the highlight color, and it's just laying in very sketchily. All right. The last thing we need to do for this is to go ahead and add those chairs. And when I did this as original class for me, we sketched on our chairs. But I know most of you, that's not your gig. So what I'm going to do is provide you a tracing of them. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to take my original piece. Even though it's a little bigger, it'll still be okay. And I'm setting my piece down, and I'm grabbing a pen. I'm going to put tracing paper over here. And I'm never worried about them being exact, but I'm going to look at some of the really strong features, which is this arm, and the really strong features, which are the pickets of the chair. And there's a back piece. I'm going to follow these pickets down. A pattern, have you followed me for a while? No, in my opinion, is a guide and not a life sentence, or not something that has to be followed exactly. So I say that, and I know it's sometimes hard to believe or want to believe. Get this back leg of my chair. It's the back leg of this chair. So these are kind of like Adirondack chairs, to which, I don't know about you, but if you've ever sat in them, they're not the most comfortable thing in the world. And they're also not perfect. But to me, they're more perfect when they're old and slightly decrepit than they are when they are more perfect. That's the top of my chair. There's my seat. So there's one. I'm going to do this one the same way. Start with that arm. I'm going to come up. I'm going to kind of outline my pickets of my chair. There's a little space in between there. I'm going to give a good idea where that back line is, or back support is. Here's the bottom of my chair. And I can come back and guesstimate. And we will go ahead, oops, wrong line. Sometimes when I make a mistake like that, I just kind of come in and fill this in so I know that's a boo-boo. I'm just going to double check. So we've got the bottom base of our chair, we've got our legs, we're showing part of our arms. Here would be the part of the chair here. Okay. So I'm going to take that tracing and I'm going to set it here with the idea that my chairs might be a tiny bit bigger, but that's okay. They are on the pier, or whatever we've decided this is. And I'm going to grab me some paper that I can transfer these on with. So this is graphite paper. Depending on your colors, you might need to use white or dark. I think the dark is going to work quite well for me. So lay it down where you want it. Hang on to your tracing in one spot or the other. Come back, lay down your graphite with the shiny side down, and then put as few or as many lines in as you need. I am just going to use my pencil, but I'm just going to do the lines that I think I need. I know I can always come back and add more if I need to. Get this line. I'll just take a quick peek. I can kind of see what that is. I'll do this side as well. There's my leg. There's that long runner. The back of the chair. Come up where these pickets are showing. I think I did the arm, but let's make sure. All right, basic shape of my chair. All right, so my chairs, if I may here, are kind of a reddish brown. So I'm going to add a little red to that burnt umber and just kind of base them in. But before I start there, I'm actually going to do the bottom rungs or braces, whatever we're going to call those. Let me get them there. Why can't I see you? There you go. With brown plus black. So for this, we're going to need some brown, black, white, and red. I've got some brown out. I've got a little red out. Almost out of this color. Grab my black. And it's good to have a photo reference, if you are able to look at something like this. I'm going to grab just a round brush if I can. Now remember, your colors might fade a little more, so you might feel like you need to come back and add a little more color. Right now I'm just going to go ahead and fill in this brown black color, my rungs of this chair, the bottom part of them, part they're sitting on, whatever we're going to call that. I'm working on paper today, so I might need a little extra water to make my paint just flow. And then this line that's going to connect my chair here. Then I'm going to go with that brown and red. I made this brownish reddish color. And I'm going to fill in this arm. If you had Rookwood red, that would work really well too. See a little bit of the arm, but on this side over here. And what I like to do is just find a round or even a small flat. And this is here. I can go ahead and put this in, but I'm not going to be too concerned about it right this second. I'm going to find these rungs. And let them go all the way down. If they skip a little, don't worry. We're going to come in and shade them a little bit anyhow. They can have a little bit of gap. I can come back and round my tops if I need to when I'm done. I've got the basic shape of this chair happening. Take them all the way down to this rung thing, that supports the back of your chair. There is a little bit of the seat that you're going to see here. I'm going to fill that in. And you see a bit of the seat that goes from here to here. Almost like a sawn-off triangle right there. Gotta have this come all the way over here. So we have the idea of our chair. There is a couple little supports that we still need to see. So right from here comes all the way down to there. Let's connect our chair all the way down. I'm going to go into black, and on black on one side of this bottom section and the top side. Bottom side of this top rung and the top. So really define those. Then be sketchy in between to kind of define your chair slats. The ones in the back obviously are going to go up and down. They go all the way down here. And pick up a little white with your brown black so you can hit and miss. Give some worn looks in the back of your chair. A little bit on your arm as well, and on the rungs. Then you want to be able to see the idea of a couple of the slats going across the chair that way. I'm going to outline the bottom part of this one. I don't think I need to outline here, but maybe just a little bit here, just to define it. And then we'll lighten up that little bit of white and brown just at the top here. They are rough looking chairs, okay? No doubt about it. So if I go back with the idea that brown and black, where I can really see the base of this chair. It's wider in the back. It's going to get a little more narrow as it goes up toward the front. I'm getting a really good color here. It's a little blacker than I want, but that's okay. I see the same thing coming up at an angle on this one. Define that bottom. I defined up here to begin with. So it has a little more of a curve to it. Let's go ahead and just outline the bottom part of this with this darker color. And use that darker color to define this line that's going to go straight down. Then you're going to switch to mixing the red and the brown together. Seem to have misplaced my red too. How is that possible? I haven't moved. Seriously. I got enough to do this, but I think I need a little more brown, which I have, and a little more red. That's a little more brown. Let's grab a little more red. It's making that red-brown color. I'm gonna follow these more brown. I'm not going to worry about the cross piece to begin with. I want these to be pretty close all the way down. But just to make it more of a reddish brown. Uh-oh, I just added a goober into our water that I don't want. Don't want that at all. Using clean water, scrubbing it off, clean water, scrubbing it off, and we're good. Okay, let's fill in the arm part with this brownish reddish color. And the little leg that we see here. And we see a little bit of the seat sticking out. I have to define that a little more. And we see a little bit of the seat in through here as well. Go in with your black and define where your chair seat is. Here's the bottom of our support there. And go in between. I am making my chairs extremely rough. You certainly can follow the pattern and do them more one picket at a time style, and that will define them much more clearly. But I want these to be kind of just the idea of a little more rough. I already outlined the bottom here, but I want to make sure I can see my leg up here. Bottom of my chair, bottom of my seat. And I'm going to use that brown and yellow and white to make a lighter color that I can, oops, that might be a little too light. Highlight here, highlight in my slats of my chair a bit. And that got way too light, so I'm just going to come back in and darken that a little bit more. And then right underneath where our chair is sitting with just some regular brown, just give it a little bit of space and let it look like there's a bit of a shadow underneath those chair legs so that they're sitting. So a little water, a little of the brown, a little space between the actual deck and the chairs. Shadow underneath the seat. Oops, I missed a line that's going to connect this arm of the chair down there. Let's go ahead and do this one too. There we go. Look back at your foliage in the background and decide if you might like it to be a little brighter or a little more of it. It seems to, mine seem to get smaller as it dried. So I'm coming back with a little orange, and I'm going to pop up some orange a little more. And I might even want to make my trees a little higher beyond here. I think it could just use a little more pop of color. And so I'm just tapping this in. Nothing fancy. These are not strokes. These are just a little bit. Wherever I'm going to do that, I'm going to pull it back in into my water a little bit. I'm going to grab a little bit more red here and there. The colors can get muted because we are putting them on top of one another. I want to make sure I pull in a little red back into here. And then I also want to make sure that I'm topping it off with some greens, or have some greens that are separating that a little bit. And I can go back with that dark Hauser green, or I can even pick up one of the lighter versions of that and just pull in a little extra greens here and there. Get your yellows, pops of yellow here and there too. The foliage is our star for this piece, or our flower of this piece. If you needed to have a little sunflower by your chairs, you could do that as well. but I really wanted to kind of give you a little lesson on some of the reflection. And then, of course, our little chairs are our focal point for this. Okay, I will have something a little special extra for you in October. I have just figured out our piece. I'm going to get it painted myself tonight, and then I'm going to come up with the technique for next week, and we'll do the project in the 3rd week. I appreciate your grace and understanding between losing a dear friend at the beginning of this month or beginning of September and just pulling it all together. It's been a little off, but this has been fun. So I want you to see how different they all look. This is the piece I painted with you. This is the piece that I used to turn into acrylics. And this was my original. It still was done in acrylics, but was done with tube acrylics, so the colors were mixed a little differently. So it's good to see that no two ever have to or should look alike. And I hope you enjoyed this rendition of Reflections at the Water. Thanks so much.